Hey everyone, in this video I want to go over how I am weathering my N-scale Code 55 track. This is a much smaller scale, so a lot of the other features or I guess techniques that you might find online, I find it to be a little bit harder to do with, like especially with airbrushing at this kind of scale, trying to get even just this individual rails and all of that. So I wanted to go through my process, of course, and at least show what I found was working for me. All of this is still a little bit in progress, but I wanted to show at least these kind of double turnouts real quick and yeah, just show how I was doing that. So I had a variety of brushes that I am using, so variety in sizes and everything that I just picked up from my local hobby store. But I am probably going to be using a brush about this size. I find that the smaller ones could be nice for it, but it wasn't picking up enough actual paint to get onto the railing and everything. So I liked the slightly larger one with that. But I'll use the other ones in a second for some other techniques. But I'm also just starting off, want to show the two main colors that I'm using for this. So for the rust, at least, just starting off with those rails, I'm just doing a matte acrylic, this sort of espresso that you can get from Michaels, and then the other one that I'm using is this Liquitex Scarlet Red Cadmium Red Light Hue, and mixing these together because of course this is a little bit too bright, but it does give me that saturation and kind of orange glow that I want. And then the other one, of course, is giving me sort of that base of the kind of oxidization itself. So I have that over here on my palette. I, of course, will come back over too with some additional sort of like black and gray to get some staining in the middle of these. But basically what I'm doing is, like I said, just mixing the two here, and I'll get sort of a nice, I guess, orangish hue out of it. Nothing too intense. I can sort of pull this up. So this is a bit too orange, I would say. Probably add more brown to it. So, but then once I do that, I'll and the one thing too with the Liquitex, it is a little bit thicker, which I actually like because I'm not getting as much like streaking on the railing. And then I can, of course, kind of wipe off the top parts. So it is a bit more manual, I would say, and like kind of intensive with the technique, but I'm finding some pretty decent results with it. And for my switching layout here, I think it's working pretty decently. So like I said, I just start off with a bit of a dab on the end, and then I can kind of come in here and paint on the side of the railing itself and start to get the actual rust buildup that might be happening. Of course, like as this dries, it actually, I find it to get less saturated. Can zoom in a little bit more. So the saturation will sort of go down as well as, yeah, like I said, it dries up. But basically coming through here, painting all of this, and then I'll kind of come back as well and get some dabbing going on in the middle part. So there we go. And you are going to end up with the paint, of course, on the rails. So the one thing with that is I've just been using my finger basically to run across it and pretty much resolve any of those sort of like paint buildups. So I'm just going to paint a couple of these, then I'll come back, like I said, and you could use also like a napkin or something, but I know that I can also use my nail if need be to make sure that, yeah, none of it's sort of building up. So we're starting to get a little bit of that sort of orange hue going on here that we can see. And then I'll come and paint some more down here real quick. And with the turnouts, they're generally going to have a lot more sort of like kind of the buildup from both like coal as well as like brakes and everything else. So it's going to generally be actually a bit thicker there. So what I'll do as well is once I like place it down in some parts of here, I'll also run through and kind of like coat the whole bottom portion of the track and everything in this area, just to get a bit more. And like I said, if things get a bit too intense, I'm going to be coming back with that black to kind of overlay on top of things. So yeah, it'll most likely resolve a lot of those sort of issues there. Then just paint a bit in here. And as well, you can see like if you're wanting more like orange in certain parts, you can kind of build that up. Like I said, a lot of this will kind of desaturate as it goes on, but if you wanted to, you could come back through with a second pass. I've only done like a single pass on some of this stuff, and actually paint in your additional orange there. So there we go. And with the turnouts, I find like this to be a pretty simple method. Like I said, it does take time and is not as fast as like airbrushing or the like, I guess, powders or so. I was a little bit concerned with powders just potentially having dust residue kind of coming up. I'll of course clean this track as well, but and then, like I said at the beginning too, the airbrushing, I was mainly just concerned about trying to get down to this finer scale with like the Code 55 track, because as you see, it's pretty tiny. So it can be quite hard, especially with like large fingers, and if you were trying to spray just in a very specific spot to get those sort of results. So there we go. And what I did with this as well is this is kind of a desk layout, so I did have the ability to sort of like come and flip it and actually paint the other side of most of my track here as well. But beyond that, like, yeah, I would say do factor in if you're able to like hover over the top or so to get the other side of your rails if it's ever going to be visible. If not, I guess you don't have to worry about it. But just something else to think about as well. So starting to get some build up in there. This spot maybe a little bit has too much rust, but that's okay. Like I said, we'll probably fix it with some black going on in a second. There we go. Let me rotate around here a little real quick. And with this one as well, I'll zoom out just a little bit for the track. Drop down some of those parts. And I'm going for a bit more of a, I guess, rusted track than, you know, common. So it's probably a lot of buildup, a lot of weathering and all. But I like the sort of look with the mixture of the rust kind of wearing off, as well as like the black sort of like breaks and just buildup that kind of gets in there with some of the coal and soot. And like the cinder marks as well. So like like I said, even oil stains will kind of come in a second too. But main thing is trying to get this. I would consider it, since we do have the freedom here, since we are like a bit more hands-on with it. I'm doing a bit of like, individual layering, where I start off with like one sort of material, and doing, of course, the actual rails first. One thing, of course, too, this might have been easier to actually do before I put down my actual ballast, but with this at least is that I kind of wanted some of the rust build off, kind of coming from onto the ballast, so that's what I was thinking, at least with that. Don't know if it necessarily turns out better, whether you want to like do the rust before or after, but yeah, main thing is just it's up to you really. The hands-on approach, there's not really anything that you could do incorrectly. The main thing is just looking at your reference and sort of building it up in that way. So there we go. And you come through. And then of course I guess most important thing to, if you don't want to mess up anything, let me switch this over real quick, and I'll kind of keep this in the middle, that way it doesn't stick with the paint drying. But the most important part of this is of course the wiping off the actual track, so you do want to do that. There we go. Like I said, I will do a sort of a run or cleanup basically before I actually run any of my cars, but this is just like a good practice, of course, to keep that majority of the sort of paint off my track there. So there we go. Can change the color real quick with my light to see if that helps out at all for visibility's sake. It at least allows you to see different lighting scenarios. Trying to keep it somewhat of a white light, that way I don't mess too much with the colors and everything. But just gonna do a couple more of these spots real quick, and then we can jump over to some of the other weathering. So I'll kind of skip ahead real quick there. So now we have, of course, some variation and everything on our track. I can zoom in just to show a little bit of the variation and everything. It's a little bit messy, but overall you can see that we're getting some nice breakup there. And this is just using those techniques that I was just mentioning, just throwing in a little bit of that, missed a kind of a spot right here. Just throwing in, some colors, getting some variation there. The main thing is you don't want to like keep it too consistent across the board, just because it's pretty natural in how it occurs, and it's all about sort of the weathering process. So it can be messy as long as it's kind of reined in, totally fine. But there we go. We have kind of our first pass at least with some of that. So now what we can do is I'm going to switch over to sort of a guess like I'll go ahead and do some of the black. So just going to use that simple black, and I can come in here and actually do some sort of like lighter detail in the middle, and again, not trying to keep it too complicated or anything. And then I'll kind of brush it out, smooth it out. That way it's not like super strong. But this would be, a mixture of like oil stains maybe building up, as well as like anything coming off from the brakes. And this can help get some breakup in there. Generally as well, like around turnouts and everything, it's even more common. So I'll try to basically break up some of that actual, like the ballast and how the ballast is looking, to where it feels pretty different in these parts around some of these like turnouts. So there we go. Now I'll zoom out a little bit. But this can be great for even like down here. This might not be in a turnout, but I could just throw some random staining or oil happening in the middle there, and then you get some nice sort of breakup. Go over here, and as well as like around some of these other switches and everything, I can build it up a bit. And the nice part about this is you do, like I said, it takes more time, but you are getting a lot more control out of it. You have the freedom to really decide like where you want specific stains. You know, you have that refinement of a tiny brush. I could even go get my smaller one and do that, but I really have the ability to get in here at the very low kind of scale and get all that detail in there. Can put some even out here around the edges, and I do very little paint because, you know, I can always add, but it's hard to take away. I could of course paint back over things, but I think in general it's good to, especially with like a black tone, it can definitely like be a lot really fast. And so yeah, just starting off with sort of a little amount can be a bit better. So I'm going to rotate that a little bit, and additionally, I'll put down my other brush real quick. What I do find to be also helpful sometimes is coming back in here with like a larger sort of brush. And I do have this like, I guess, dark gray. You can see, let me show. I think it's actually called deep gray. Also just one of these simple Craft Smart ones. I don't use necessarily like expensive paints for this. I might for like other weathering and stuff and all on my actual like rolling stock, but for this I keep it pretty simple. But this can even be nice to get some variation breakup in your ballast, so that way you have sort of like staining going around as well. And yeah, for a while it's going to not look, you know, the best, because a lot of this is like sort of like loud noise, I would say. But as you continue to work on it and you get more and more in there, then it sort of all blends together and starts to look like your reference that you're going for. So definitely, like, if you're immediately not seeing it, don't be discouraged. Like I said, it takes time. But yeah, it all comes down to the layering, getting a good amount of variation in there, and trying to overall just trust the process with building up your scene. So gonna continue to sort of do some of this other stuff real quick, and I'll probably also skip ahead, that way you can see the more finished result and how this would turn out if you did it across the whole board. One or two more. Let me switch back real quick to the black, but As you can see there, now we're starting to get more refinement even with our track, which is feeling pretty decent. Yeah, I think some of this like ballast in here could definitely benefit from some more. Remember to wipe off the rails if anything might get on top. And yeah, let's do maybe just some on this outside portion here. Again, not really going to get the black on the rail at all, but that's why it's okay that some of my like rust and stuff sort of, I would say, like, you know, came off a bit. Or I guess I put a bit too much rust in some portions, but like I said, that's okay because you can come back with your other tones and dilute it down. Even if I wanted to use something like the gray real quick and do sort of like some variation with that, I could. Go. So yeah, like I said, it's going to take time. But hopefully you see sort of the end result and what you could get out of doing it this way. Of course, it's not the only way. There's plenty of other ways to do it. Just wanted to show really like what I found was successful so far with my actual layout. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to continue to make just process videos and stuff, as well as some reviews on actual like locomotives and stuff that are running on this. Maybe even some rolling stock videos. So if you like the content or anything, feel free to subscribe and like the video, and I will kind of jump forward and show you some final shots. I just wanted to show a little bit more progress. So we have, this is the older area over there, and then this is the area that we were just kind of working on. So you can see that I used that light gray to basically give some kind of darker implications around the track and stuff, where some of that might come off or whatever. Just trying to break up that one tone of the ballast, I think, is important. And then of course over here started to get a lot more of the oily and kind of, I guess, sort of like cinders and everything else that might come off of these locomotives. So now we're starting to get a little bit better indication of some weathering and everything. I still need to actually weather out the switch here, but besides that, yeah, starting to sort of come together. I'll probably do some touch-ups as well, and yeah, actually get in here a bit more with some additional sort of I guess treatment with it. But I wanted to show another sort of in progress of like how it's starting to feel and it's starting to come together, in contrast to like what it might feel like without anything. It's a bit, yeah, just more flat in tone. This at least is giving it way better kind of representation of what it might look like in yeah, just in the real world. So and now I'm just going to actually jump back over and show the, of course, final result. So now that we're somewhat wrapped up, we can see that gotten a good amount of variation overall. Have the rust build up along the rail's edge, but also kind of came in as well and did that pass of both mixing in some lighter grays, or I guess darker grays compared to the ballast, but then also taking in that black and really getting in a lot of the sort of like oil stains and like, I guess, cinder breakup that you would imagine. Additionally, like around some of the turnouts, you can see here, right here in the top left of the screen. Basically just did a bit more of a, I would say, weathering there, just because there's a lot of like wear and tear from this moving. That would probably also do some build up and everything, as well as like the trains are sort of changing direction in that moment. So yeah, just doing some natural weathering around those overall, and can kind of go back here. But with this, like I said, I just used a couple of brushes, just very kind of fine tip. This one was a smaller one, but also had the larger one here, and then the common one that I was using for this. These are very cheap brushes. That's why I was using it for this, because all of this ballast is going to probably ruin it. So it's like $1 kind of brush, super simple. But going back through real quick one more time, the gray that I was sort of using through here to break up that ballast. I do have, this is the fine ballast that you can get for the I guess it's, yeah, code 55, or just in general in scale. It's pretty, I would say, general. Good scale and everything, kind of correlates over correctly to the scale of the track. But I was using the mid gray here. Let me zoom out a little bit. So this was the deep gray here that I was using. And then additionally, for the, I guess, darker black areas, just was using this black, also just cheap bottle. And then the rust was the scarlet red, cadmium red that I liked. That was a little bit thicker. One thing that I did find with the black as well was that I did need it to be a little bit more, I would say, not as thick, and so I did thin it out a little bit with some water. That way I'm just basically able to have it go in between the actual like rails a little bit more, and get into the general sort of ballast that's down there in between the tracks. So go back here. But yeah, that's basically all that I used for this. And as you see, like I was mentioning previously, it's a pretty simple way to get some nice detail for the tracks, and be able to like kind of paint in your custom sort of weathering and all, and get some really solid results like that. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like the video as well. That definitely helps out. And of course subscribe, because I will be making more videos like this in the future, just trying to do some fun ways to kind of show off some different techniques, as well as, yeah, what works for me at least. And you know, there is a ton of different ways to do this. Just wanted to show off one technique that I felt got a little bit more of a kind of hands-on approach with it, where I could really get in there and yeah, have a lot of fun with it as well. So it does take a bit more time compared to some of the other methods, but I think it gives some pretty solid results overall. So yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.